Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. The projector isn't that big, so if you need to, feel free to come forward and sit closer. But if you're cool all the way back there, that's cool with me. It's so great to see you. I'm gonna be honest. There's way more people here than I thought would show up, given that it's the first session, and it's not a very sexy topic. Well, I think it's sexy, but Anyway, so again, my name is David Stewart. I'm currently at UW getting my DMA in conducting. Before I decided to continue my education, I was teaching at Graham Kapowsin High School. They're performing right after this, so make sure to go support them. And the reason why I got really into how to improve intonation is, when I got my first job after college, I was like, oh my gosh, no one can play in tune. And it was kind of a shock to me. I'd spent a lot of time playing in a pretty good collegiate wind ensemble, and I kind of took good intonation for granted. And then all of a sudden I was out in the real world and I was like, oh my gosh, so I tried to come up with some things that helped, and I'm just here to share that today. So, little overview of today. We're going to talk about ear training, building emotional awareness surrounding intonation, the pitch adjustment mechanics, which are different for a lot of the different instruments, tuning unisons, the tuning note. I have some thoughts about that. Intervallic tuning, chord tuning, application to rep, singing, super important, and then a little recap and question time. So before we jump in, I just want to share some of my beliefs. I think it's important that you guys know my beliefs as a speaker, so you know where I'm coming from, and you can take everything I say with a grain of salt. First, I think intonation matters a lot. I think it's kind of unfortunate. A band can play with really great style and really great expression and musicality and balance, but if it's not in tune, I just have a hard time really enjoying it, and I don't think I'm alone. I think even like the grandmas in the audience, although they may not be able to articulate, well, the third needs to be 14 cents lowered, they can probably hear that something's not quite right. So I think intonation matters. I think students can and should play in tune as long as they're given a framework, a sequence that allows them to be successful at all these steps. I think that sequence is way more important than any kind of innate talent. I don't think students have better ears than others. I think if we can give them a good framework that they can follow step by step, I think they are going to figure it out. And then lastly, I think good intonation can be taught concurrently with other fundamental skills. Obviously, we all know that great breathing and great breath support and good tone production all matter and are very important for intonation, but I don't think we need to wait until we solve all of those problems before we start talking about pitch. I think if we wait, then we may never get there. So I think we can start introducing some of these ideas concurrently. Some caveats. I'm just going to assume that factors like working instruments, reeds, and mouthpieces aren't really an issue here. I'm also kind of assuming that for this to work, students are in the ballpark of the right pitch. So if you have beginning clarinet players playing on a size 1.5 reed, and their open Gs are like 40 cents flat, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, it's impressive. I don't even know how they do it. But if you're dealing with that, maybe wait a few years before you can start talking about this kind of stuff. There are a ton of approaches for teaching intonation. Some people that I respect like crazy, they don't really talk about intonation that much, and instead they talk mostly about balance and blend. And for them, they're able to get really fantastic results. This is just my approach, and it's not meant to invalidate any other approaches. I think they're all equal. And then lastly, this has worked really well for me and the groups I work with, but no guarantee it'll work with you. So obviously you know your students in your program. So again, take everything I say with a grain of salt, steal anything you want, and disregard anything you want. Okay, so the general framework that I'm hoping we can go over today, and at the end I'll share this slideshow with everyone, so I don't feel like you have to write everything down, but if you want to, go for it. First step, we want to be able to teach students how to orally identify in tune versus out of tune. And I think this has to be done off of the instruments, and we'll dive into that. Second, I think we need to teach students how to accurately manipulate their pitch on the go, which means, embouchure, slide position, hand position if you're a horn player. and these are all different for the different instruments. And then lastly, I think we need to kind of help students get in touch with the fact that being out of tune and listening to out of tune sounds is innately not a positive experience, right? So I want to think about what would happen in theory if we could succeed at all three of these things. If we taught students how to hear in tune versus out of tune, if we taught them how to successfully manipulate their pitch and be able to, you know, bend their pitch down slightly, bend their pitch up, and if we condition them to, you know, dislike being out of tune as much as we do, then in theory they would just start fixing all the intonation problems all on their own. And I've seen this happen. It's kind of cool. You get to do less work, and we all live longer, and it's great. So, hearing and identifying intonation. I really like using pitch generators, which you can just find online. You can just Google pitch generators or tone generators, and you'll find a bunch. As long as you're able to change the pitch, like change the frequency and change the tone, I think it's great. So for example, what I do, and actually what I have up on my computer right now, is just these two online tone generators side by side, and you can see I can kind of use the slider to adjust the pitch. And the great thing about this is no Yamaha harmony director needed, so if you don't have one of those, you don't need one. And also, I actually think this gives you a little more control with some of the fine pitch and be able to really model to your students in tune versus out of tune. So, with your two tone generators, there's a ton of different exercises and games that you can play with your students to help them get used to identifying in tune versus out of tune. You can have them find the beats. You can play slightly out of tune sounds, have them try to, like, you know, mini conduct to the beats they hear or tap their leg. Pitch detective, you have students give a thumbs up as soon as they hear the two pitches get perfectly in tune. Better or worse, thumbs up if it's getting better, thumbs down if it's getting worse. One time I actually played a game of, you know, the getting warmer game, like warmer, warmer, colder, colder, when someone's trying to find something. We played that game, but using the two drones. And so the colder the student got, the more out of tune the drones got, and the warmer, the more in tune they got. It was great. They found the hidden baton. It was epic. And then humming and singing. You can do all these same exercises where the students can hum with the drone so they themselves feel and identify in tune versus out of tune. So I thought it'd be fun. Let's actually try some of this. So I got my two tone generators up here. So first off, I'm going to play two tones. They're going to be slightly out of tune, and I want to see if we can either just like maybe just wave a hand or something about the speed at which we hear the beats in the sound. Great. Yeah, and I think even pretty young students can do this. They can hear it. Awesome. Now, you guys are going to go like this with your thumb, and as soon as you hear it go perfectly in tune, you're going to shoot your thumb straight up. As soon as you hear it go perfectly in tune. We had some premature thumbs. Let's try that again. Right? It's so obvious once you hear it. And I think students can really quickly be successful at this kind of stuff. And I'm just looking around the room and I see people who are far more creative than I am. These are just the exercises and games that I've come up with, but I'm sure that there's people out there who've already come up with even more engaging, fun ways of helping students identify in tune versus out of tune using the drones. Okay, let's just do better or worse. You're going to give me a thumbs up when you hear it's getting more in tune. You're going to give me a thumbs up when you hear it's getting less in tune. Great. Great. Awesome. We got some really great ears in the room. That's fantastic. I would hope so, I guess. But yeah. All right. We don't need to play Getting Warmer with anyone here. We don't need to. This is like, oh, no. We'll move on. We'll move on. Yes?
With those generators that you're using right now, is there changing the octave on one of them?
Yeah, so...
It's like a flute and a tuba kind of a thing?
So all it is it's a slider from of the hertz. So you can slide it all the way to the right, and it will go really high. I guess the one downside is if you want to think in terms of musical notes, you'll have to do a little math. But for example, I'll just demonstrate how high or low this one can go. And everything in between. And then you can change the different waves. Right now that's a triangle wave. I didn't even know that was a thing, which is crazy, but yeah.
So you play these games with like a third and a fifth and get them.
Oh, we'll get there.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we'll get there. Hold your horses. Right now we're just talking unison. So I'm gonna be honest, if you can get a band to play a unison pretty dang in tune, that's a win, honestly, right? Bands, it's hard to play in tune in a band, so even just a unison is in tune. Great. Here's a little video of me doing one of these exercises with one of the UW bands. This band you're about to see meets once a week. It's like a come one, come all band. The ability level in the room varies drastically. And we have a lot of new people that come in every quarter, so it's kind of a thrill what the first concert F of the quarter is going to sound like. It's a little shocking sometimes, if I'm going to be honest. So we really have to make kind of listening and for intonation a priority. Oh, that didn't work. And as soon as you hear it go perfectly in tune, I want you to give me a thumbs up. As soon as you hear it go perfectly in tune. So obvious, right? Good, let's try that again. There we go. Awesome. So again, we're just trying to raise their awareness of listening for intonation. If you're brave, you can also demo with your instrument, which I actually think is pretty beneficial because it helps bridge the gap between listening for pitch in just two drones, which is pretty easy, black and white, and then listening to pitch with an actual live instrument. So here's an example of me using one of the drones, and then on my clarinet, I'm modeling in tune versus out of tune. I think we're playing the same game here. Now, similar game, I'm going to start out of tune, and I'm going to try my best to get perfectly in tune. And when I get perfectly in tune, you're just going to give me a thumbs up, okay? You guys are really hard to please. I did my best to play in tune. Let's try that. Let's try that again. Maybe be a little more kind to me. Here we go. Let's try that again. All right, I got there. Then I kind of lost a little bit. It's a really challenging game. So anyway, I said like if you're brave, demo with your instrument because obviously you want to be able to do it successfully. So maybe in preparation, just turn on a drone and just double check that you still got those chops that you used to have. You know what I'm saying? Great. So by now, hopefully, students are getting really aware of being able to listen for in tune versus out of tune. And this can take time, and you can just kind of start incorporating it into your daily warm-ups. Next, let's talk about what I call building emotional awareness. I think it's an innately an unpleasant experience to hear out of tune sounds and to be involved in an out of tune sound. But I think maybe we can just help help open our students' ears to that and help them kind of get more in touch with that experience. So some things that I've done is I've just turned on some pretty out of tune sounds. I'll demo right now, just very briefly, just so you can hear like what I'm talking about. And then I'll just make everyone sit there, no talking, you know, and they'll just kind of live in it. Right, and the visceral faces of disgust that I just saw in the room, that's what you want to see in your students, right? That's what we want. It's great. Yeah, so then you can have them discuss how it made them feel, identify any bodily sensations. I really like just playing like a recording of like a beautiful band piece, maybe like kind of a slower piece we're working on, and I'll take my clarinet and I'll just ruin it by playing along, and I'll play out of tune, you know, and they'll be able to be like, no, what the heck are you doing? You know, I just want them to hear and become more aware of this. I was gonna demo this, and I'm really sorry for the clarinet players in the room, but I had, what was it? I had a Brahms sonata ready to go, but unfortunately I forgot my clarinet in my hotel room, so I will not be able to do that. Sorry, Martin. Yeah. All right. And then you can also, again, using drones or your instrument, try to see if students are able to identify differences in the felt experience of sharp versus flat. So for example, in the same band, here's an example where I'm just going to demonstrate like playing sharp, playing flat for the band, and I'm giving them a chance to just kind of discuss if they had any felt differences. And it was really cool hearing how everyone perceived them differently. Like everyone had very distinct differences in felt experience. Okay, now, so we're feeling pretty good about identifying out of tune versus in tune now, right? Cool, so when we're out of tune, you're either above the pitch. We know what that's called when you're above the pitch? Sharp. Or you're below the pitch, which is great. And for me, they have distinct different flavors, I would say. So same thing, I'm going to demonstrate one. I want you to kind of talk about it with the people around you, how you would describe it, how it made you feel. And I want to see if you also experience differences. So I will demonstrate sharp first. Now I'm going to demonstrate flat. Maybe it has a different flavor for you. All right, take 30 seconds, talk about it with the people around you if you heard any differences, felt any differences. Anyone here have any distinct differences? Yeah, Nick.
Oh, just when it's flat, I like physically get up.
I know, yeah. When something's really flat, I feel like I'm like a fish that just got hooked, you know? And I'm like, ugh. Yeah. Anyone else difference? Yeah.
When I was sharp, I kind of felt very tight.
Yeah. When I hear sharp sounds, I turtle, you know?
Yeah, and then I was like, that's a little too loose at these kind of
Yeah.
spots. So.
Yeah, this is great. And I really believe that your students have these sensations and thoughts too. And I think it's really beneficial to just kind of get that out in the open and have them explore that a little bit. Great. So at this time, hopefully, if we incorporate this into kind of our daily warm-up, students are able to identify in tune versus out of tune. And at this point, they don't like out of tune. If you stop here, though, then you're just going to have students kind of start to feel bad about themselves because they're going to be aware of how out of tune they are all the time, right? So you can't stop here. You got to go to the next step, and that is that you have to teach everyone how to actually manipulate their pitch in the instrument-specific correct ways such that they don't develop or worsen bad habits. And this is different for a lot of the different instruments, and it's important that as band directors, we know what the differences are, and we can teach those differences, or at the very least, we have the resources to point our students to so they can learn. So, because I don't know everything and I don't play all the instruments, I had some friends record some really quick videos talking about various instruments and how to change their pitch. So if it's okay with you guys, I'm just going to let those play so we can all kind of learn that stuff, because I think it's important. He then goes into and talks all about alternate fingerings on tuba. So if that interests you, I'll share the presentation at the end, and you can go and look at that. Also, Evan goes into alternate fingerings on horn too. So anyway, yeah, I thought that was really informative, because I always see like professional tuba players, they're always moving that little slide thing on top, and I was like, what are you doing there? Because I don't know about you guys, but the tubas we had at GK, I don't think those slides have moved in years or something like that. So I don't think that's always going to be possible. Now, if you do have a tuba, which that is possible, that's great. You can show them how that works. But I think for most brass instruments, a lot of the pitch comes from the embouchure, like Chris was talking about. Awesome. So now that everyone knows how to kind of manipulate their pitch, we want to give students opportunities to practice doing that, and opportunities to practice refining that. So you can have just everyone play like a unison note. I like concert F. It's the people's note. I love concert F. And then you can have your students using the correct way that we've discussed, bend their pitch down and then back and then up and back. And at first, these adjustments are going to be massive. Like the first time you have them do this, you're going to hear like alto saxophone players like bending it down like a half step or a whole step or something. And that's okay. That's okay for now. We want them to like figure out how those mechanics work. But over time, of incorporating this into kind of your daily routine, the adjustments are going to get much, much more small, which is what we want, because in music, often we make small adjustments. But again, it's super important that students are able to make those adjustments on the fly. So one thing that I really like to do is I'll take a unison note and I'll divide the band in half, either woodwinds brass or by birthday, or we'll just alternate ones and twos. And we'll have half the band hold a concert F, and they'll try to hold it as steady as they can. And then the other half will come in on the concert F, and they will bend their pitch flat a tiny bit, back in tune, sharp, and then back in tune. And again, the adjustments are going to be way too big at first as students are kind of trying to figure out how to actually manipulate their pitch, but that's okay. Over time, the adjustments will get smaller and smaller, and their ears will become more and more refined for pitch. So let's go ahead and watch a little example of this. Again, I think this is the once a week band at UW. Does that sound good? Here we go. Ones hold, twos. We're going to be bending pitch just until you can hear that you're out of tune. Here we go. Excellent, excellent. Let's switch now. I'm hearing small adjustments. That's perfect. Here we go. Switching. Bend only until you can hear you're out of tune. So notice the language I'm using, bend the pitch only until you can hear that you're out of tune. That's because not only is this exercise an opportunity for them to refine their pitch adjustment mechanics, but this is also an opportunity to further refine their pitch discernment, like their listening. So the more advanced students in the room are going to be the ones who are able to bend their pitch smaller, because they'll hear right away when they go out of tune and then back in. And again, this can just be part of your daily warm-up or something, your daily routine. And the great thing is, over time, the pitch adjustments will get smaller and smaller as their ears get more refined and their pitch adjusting mechanics get more refined. And the baseline intonation of that note will just get better and better and better every day. Okay, the tuning note. So we finally have the tuning note. Notice we haven't even talked yet about adjusting the length of our instruments yet, and I think that's for a specific reason. I think that students need to be able to hear in tune versus out of tune and be able to manipulate their pitch like on the fly, on the go, and be able to match pitch on a unison before a tuning note really becomes that fruitful. I don't know if you guys can identify with this, but often when I go to band concerts, including my own band concerts, the tuning note at the beginning of the concert is the most out of tune note of the whole night. You guys know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I think this is maybe why. So here's the kind of the procedure that I use for the tuning note, which works really well if we've gone over these prerequisite skills and give students an opportunity to practice those skills. So they listen to the tuning note, whether from a drone or an instrument. I have them hum or sing first, just so they really can audiate the correct pitch. Then they join the tuning note on their instrument, and then just like the exercises, they then use their fine adjustment mechanics to then bend the pitch slightly down or up until they hear that all the waves go away, until they hear that it's perfectly in tune. If they have to bend the pitch down, then they know, okay, I need to lengthen my instrument. I need to increase the length of my instrument. If they need to bend the pitch up a little bit to be able to match the right pitch, then they know they need to shorten the length of their instrument. I found that this is a lot more successful than having students just kind of enter in. They can feel that they're out of tune and then immediately start trying to make adjustments. If they first are able to correct it here or with their hand, then they know which way they need to adjust their instrument and roughly by how much. And then they just kind of repeat the process. They make, hey guys, sorry, they adjust their instrument, they come in, they bend the pitch, they adjust it again until they can come in and they hear that it's perfectly matching. So this is kind of the process we use, and it works really, really well. I'm just going to kind of put my own band on blast here for a second. I was describing this process, and at one point I said, okay guys, so if you need to lower the pitch with your embouchure to match the tuning note, what does that mean you need to do to the length of your instrument? And there was just so much confusion and panic in their faces. And these are college students, right? They were really confused by this. So I just think this really goes to show how important it is that we have kind of a more standardized, sequenced way of teaching intonation and how to tune. Let's say that you have to bend the pitch down in order to match the tuning note perfectly. What does that mean you need to do to the length of your instrument? Tell the person next to you. If you need to bend the pitch down, what do you need to do to the length of your instrument? All the flute players are just staring right at me. I needed to save them. So anyway, I think that really highlights a problem we have and an opportunity to help our students a little better there. Okay, so by now, hopefully our unison pitches are getting pretty dang in tune. Students are really good at listening for in tune versus out of tune. We've done all these exercises with drones off the instrument. Their ears are become way more aware. By now they dislike out of tune, and they actually have the ability to fix it. And they've had a lot of practice manipulating their pitch in fine ways and matching unisons. Now it's time to expand their unison tuning capabilities. So with this, we just want to start with a familiar. So with me, that would be our concert F, because we spend so much time on it. And then from concert F, we can expand outward. I really like Remingtons because it just lets you come back to that home base. And let's think about this. If students can successfully, by now, hear in tune versus out of tune, and they have the ability to make corrections, then simply by giving them time on task, by giving them opportunities, they're going to start to figure out on their own how to play all these other notes more in tune. And if you keep bouncing between your home base, concert F, and then a new note, and back and comparing that, they're going to dial in those notes pretty quickly. And you don't have to do much work at this point. It's great. This is also a really valuable opportunity to teach students that adjusting pitch is a never-ending task. Really great musicians, when they're playing, they are constantly listening for intonation, and they're constantly adjusting on the go. It's a never-ending task. We want to dispel the myth that you can take a tuning note, get your instrument to the right length, hopefully, and then you're set. That's just not how it works, right? It doesn't work for me. I don't think it works for anyone. So by slowly expanding their unisons to other notes, we can help really reinforce and teach that this kind of listening, this kind of adjusting is a never-ending task. All right, intervallic tuning. Wow, we're really rolling now, guys. This is great. We can repeat the same exercises with intervals. I like open fifth next because it's the most consonant. And you can do that with the tuning drones that we talked about earlier. I should have included a little table that describes like the math behind it. But you can look it up. Like for example, if you want an open fifth with these tuning generators, you just take the hertz of one and you multiply it by 1.5 to get another one. So for example, I'll demonstrate here. And you can play all of the same kind of games you did earlier. So we can start to raise their awareness for in tune versus out of tune on intervals. Did I do my math right? We're about to find out. You're right, it hurts. Even a fifth out of tune hurts. Give me a thumbs up when you hear it lock in. There we go. Nice, let's try that once more. Thumbs up when you hear it be perfectly in tune. Great, so same exercises, you can do the same games, incorporate it into your warm-up. And then you can have students do pitch bending exercises on the open fifths. You can have half the band play like a concert B flat, for example, the other half play a concert F, and have the concert F subtly adjust their pitch down and up. Let's see an example of that in rehearsal. Everyone is playing on a concert F. You're gonna watch me. You're gonna bend your pitch down just a tiny bit so you can hear that you're out of tune compared to the B flat, and then we're gonna go back into tune, and then up, sharp, and then back into tune. Concert B flats, you're just gonna hold steady. Here we go, let's give it a try. And they're making pretty large adjustments, as you can hear, which is normal at first. Over time, they'll make smaller and smaller adjustments. Also, it's interesting to note the sections that were bending their pitch the most in that video were the horns and the alto saxophones, which for that band, those sections struggle with pitch the most out of everyone. So I think that's correlated. That just kind of goes to show that those sections, those students, their pitch adjustment mechanics aren't yet super refined, and their discernment for in tune versus out of tune isn't yet really refined. And you can hear that because they're the ones who have to bend their pitch the most to be able to detect when they're flat or when they're sharp. Here's another intervallic tuning exercise that I just think is amazing, and you can just you can just teach it really quickly. It's just using the first 5 notes of a scale.
So what I want you to do is we're going to sing part A of 6/4 with the drone playing. What I want you to do is predict the pitch of each sound as you move from note to note. So here's the drone. With a da, sing up part A. Ready? Sing. Predict. Don't react, predict. Listen to the third. Now listen to the fourth. That's better. Now predict all the way up to the C.
So I really like that exercise because, again, it just gives our students an opportunity to practice tuning these intervals. You land on the third, you hold it, you land on the fourth, and you land on the fifth. And again, by now, hopefully, through our drone exercises, our ear training exercises, they're getting way better at identifying in-tune versus out-of-tune intervals. They have the ability to make those adjustments on the fly, and now we're just giving them the opportunity to put those skills together. All right, chord tuning, so much fun. So you can repeat the process on a major third, and it's so great when like all the students finally hear when it's actually lowered to when it's perfectly in tune. I think, again, I should have included a table with the math on this. I'm really sorry. I think to get a major third with the drones, I think it's 5/4. I think so. So if you have an A440, then you would want a 550 hertz. Did I do that math right? Yeah, I think I did. Yeah. Anyway, but you can look that up. Telling students the major third needs to be brought down 14 cents doesn't really do much good if they can't, one, hear when a major third is in tune versus out of tune, and two, are able to properly adjust their pitch on the fly without developing or worsening bad habits. So hopefully you guys can see how by doing all these prerequisite skills and exercises, by now when you really introduce the major third, they're going to have way more success and they're going to be able to play major thirds in tune way quicker. Then again, just like before, you take the familiar, you introduce the unfamiliar, you take like whatever major chord you build first, F major chord or B flat major chord, and you can start doing Remingtons off of that, so then they can really hear the differences between the intonation. You just give them time on task, and the pitch is going to get so much better. Okay, application to rep. So without really doing much, I really think that just by doing all these exercises in your warm-ups, they're going to start to play way more in tune. I really think so, because they're going to be aware, and they're going to have the skills to be able to make adjustments on their own, and they're going to be motivated, because they don't want to be out of tune. Some things that you can do to help that process is you can adapt your warm-up and intonation exercises to match the key center and ranges of your repertoire. For example, in one of the bands I conduct at UW, we just started doing Aurora Wakes, John Mackey, and there's that whole section that's in, is it G flat? Yeah, it's in G flat, which is not a super friendly key. So we've just kind of taken all of our familiar warm-ups and now we just do them in G flat at the beginning of a class. And we're just giving the students time to listen and make adjustments and figure it out, and it's making a big difference. You can stop and do little pitch bending on really out of tune notes or moments in the music just to help activate their ears for listening for that pitch and to help activate just the pitch adjustment mechanics. And then lastly, I think it's important we choose appropriate level of music that allows our students the opportunity to play in tune. You know, as I think we all know, when we are really overwhelmed by playing right notes and rhythms, we don't really have the opportunity, we don't have the luxury of playing in tune, right? So I just think it's important that we keep that in mind when we program our music. Yeah, survival mode equals poor intonation, usually. All right, we kind of mentioned singing. We watched the Carmel High School sing. I think singing is so important. I think singing makes a huge difference in our bands. It improves intonation because it makes the students really audiate. It can improve the tone quality of our wind players by improving kind of the oral cavity, and also allows us to focus on what the music should sound like first without being encumbered by our instruments. However, I imagine a lot of us probably don't sing with our bands nearly as much as we should, me included. And here's some of the reasons why I don't do it all the time. One, sometimes it can be a little awkward, right? And so I kind of avoid it. Also, maybe it really doesn't sound good. Like the first few times you have your students sing, it can be like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Oh no. And so I avoid it. And then also, maybe it can be like a classroom management issue. You're having them do something new. They get really excited and squirrely. I know for me, when I'm like, all right, guys, we're going to sing this. It's going to be so amazing. And I have so much energy. And I go like this. And then they're like, It feels bad for me as a teacher. You know, it feels kind of like a defeat. And for that reason, I tend to avoid singing, even though I know it's so good for us. And so I just wanted to share kind of my thoughts on how you can maybe teach it as like a skill and hopefully sequence it in a way in which students can feel successful step by step. And then that way singing can become a more normal part. So I think you got to start with something really familiar, concert F. Can you sing a concert F? Can you hum a concert F? You know, you can have them alternate ones and twos. So everyone who's singing has two people on either side who are playing. That's a way to just feel safe at first. Prioritize pitch over quality of tone. You know, just make sure they know that we're not in choir. We don't have to sing with a beautiful tone of voice. We're just trying to match the pitch. And in general, I just think it's important that we introduce it in a really sequenced way where we start simple and then we start to incorporate more challenging parts. I think if the first time we try to get our band to sing is on their rep when there's multiple part harmony and independence, I think this is not going to go very well. I think as a result, us as teachers aren't going to be very inclined to try singing in the future, and students are going to start to associate singing in band with feeling uncomfortable. I think if you sequence it in a really smart way, then you can have a band that loves to sing. They look forward to it. They think it's awesome. And as a result, they play more in tune, and everyone's happy about that. So, quick little recap before we finish up here. I like using online pitch generators to help students identify in tune versus out of tune. Like I said, I see people in the room who are way more creative than I am. So I'm sure you can come up with great ways of gamifying this and creating exercises that really engage your students in the process of listening for in tune versus out of tune. Help students get in touch with what intonation feels like. You know, how great does it feel when something's perfectly in tune? How does it feel when something's not in tune? You know, why do we inherently not like that? Teach students how to accurately manipulate their pitch on the go and give them plenty of time to refine these motor mechanics. At first, you will hear big adjustments with rather poor intonation discernment, but given time, incorporated into your daily warm-up or your daily fundamentals, they'll transition to much smaller adjustments with much greater pitch discernment. Start with the familiar and gradually introduce the unfamiliar. Start with, one unison, build from there, start to play other unison notes, then introduce open fifths. You can do Remington and open fifths, and then major chords, etc. And then lastly, sing often because it's so good for us. If you want a copy of this slideshow, I think this QR code will work. If someone could just, only one way to find out. Someone could just confirm that, yes, great. Awesome, yeah. And yeah, hopefully that also gives you access to the videos. If you want to, you can just park your students in front and hit play. So do what they do. And again, any questions, feel free to stop by, say hi. I really appreciate you guys coming to this. This is awesome. I think this is an important topic, and I hope we all feel a little more confident about helping our students play in tune. Thank you.